morning. My name is David. Welcome to week 35 of 52 churches in 52 weeks. This is a one-year spiritual challenge as we attend a different church each week. So if you're curious how other churches operate and just want to join along for the fun, hit the like button and subscribe. You can also check out Instagram. And it's never a substitute for scripture, but if you want to read what happened in the first 52 and 52, it's on Amazon. I'll put all the information below. So this morning, I am in downtown Nashville on New Year's Day morning. And doing this the first time, I went to one Nashville area church, but it was more of a college age ministry service. So I've never actually have done a Nashville church service on a Sunday morning before. And I was looking around and apparently there are 700 Nashville churches. So I had to narrow it down to one. Looking around, I came across Downtown Presbyterian Church. Here's the weird thing about it. Inside, it has an Egyptian revival architecture style. It just got me thinking, why would you pick that for your church interior? Because in Exodus, Egypt is essentially the bad guy. Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, Moses, let my people go. So why would you as a church congregation choose an Egyptian architecture style for your Christian church? So I'm like, why? Like, I'm very curious. And I'm sure this is the reason they picked this probably hundreds of years ago, but I want to understand a little bit more and see what a church service like this will be like. And I've looked at pictures online and I was just absolutely wowed by what it looked like inside. So I got to find the church here. Apparently a car alarm's going off here. And I'll be back in a few moments with some takeaways from this service. So got back from downtown Nashville, and let me tell you, this was one of the most artistic and creative churches that I have ever been a part of. And that's not even counting all the Egyptian revival architecture inside the main sanctuary. There was artwork, there was an artist in residence program, and even with the liturgy, it was poetic and it was creative. There was no music, and usually in my videos I like to add some music, but this one there was nothing because outside it was so loud with all the music and those that were trying to find their place in Nashville. Here it was much more about being calm, being meditative. It was an oasis from the loudness from outside. But I tell you, the biggest takeaway I found from this is I have a newfound appreciation for downtown churches. What do I mean by that? Well, with a lot of churches, we often mention about being disciples to all the nations, to spread the message of hope throughout all the world. With Downtown Presbyterian Church, they're worried about the homeless guy across the street. Let's help that guy out first. Let's be a good Samaritan type of church. So there are two phrases I heard repeated. One was with Downtown Presbyterian Church, you are welcome, no exceptions. And the second thing was I found with this church, they were partnering with a lot of local organizations to help out the homeless and those that were living in poverty in this downtown area. So one thing that I heard was they don't necessarily want to give handouts, they want to give hand ups. So they would try and find ways, and I guess for the last 50 years, they've been providing free meals to the homeless each Saturday morning, but they're also finding ways to give opportunities, give new tools, give new skills to people that are currently facing a lot of burdens so that they can get back on their feet and be better than who they were when they first walked in. So when I first got there, I got turned around and I was a little bit lost, but when I finally did find the church was actually guarded off with the front doors. So I actually had to go down this alleyway, which was a little concerning at first. But a member pulled up. She mentioned I was in the right area, and she let me in near the back. I could tell right off the bat, this was going to be like, the artwork was just different. I think one of the first pictures that I saw was one for Jesus Christ Superstar. So that was a little bit different. And I learned early on that because it was New Year's Day morning, they were not planning for a lot of people to be attending, just thinking a lot of people were going to have that New Year's Day hangover. So they're going to have the service area in this chapel service place. But talking with the members, they were fantastic and super welcoming to me. And I mentioned, I visit different churches, and I had come from Wisconsin. And when I do these videos and these visits, I don't want any special treatment, okay? But Tom was his name. He still wanted to give me a little bit of a tour. And the very first thing that I see in this stairwell is a morning star. What's a morning star? Well, apparently it's a wrecking ball with spikes protruding from it. I could tell early on, there's something going on here. Much deeper within this church. So we get into the main sanctuary, and my jaw just pretty much hit the floor. This place was gigantic. So you first look up, and it's this bright blue ceiling, and it's supposed to depict the Egyptian sky. And as you look further on the side walls, they had stained glass windows, but with the stained glass windows, they were palm trees. There were sands. There was sun. So that was, again, supposed to depict Egypt. And as you looked towards the front, I was told this is supposed to be a visual reenactment of Karnak. So I don't know a whole lot about ancient Egypt to really understand the whole gist of that. But just to see these giant lotus column pillars up there was just so unique. And to see the turquoise and the burnt orange and the tan all over the place was just eye-opening. And to add to that, then you had Christian symbolism mixed in. So they had a cross on the side, and then at the altar area, they also had another cross with this diving dove, it looked like. So just so unique. And Tom gave me some insight and some history behind everything. I'll get into that later. But he showed me a room, a little museum room that they had. So he gave me a little bit more insight, and we started talking, and I think he could tell the church nerd inside of me with the passion. And we got talking about congregations, older congregations. And he mentioned with Downtown Presbyterian Church, they had been through that before. So here's what they did. So they had an aging congregation about 20 years ago. And knowing that they had to get younger, they also recognized, okay, with Downtown Presbyterian Church, this Egyptian revival architecture, it is one of a kind. And for a lot of people that go to downtown Nashville, you usually go there as a recording artist to get noticed. So they want to do that with the art scene, utilizing some space that they had in their attic. So they introduced an artist in residence program. So, and I was fortunate enough to be able to take a look at some of the art studios. So we went up an elevator, and I walked in the first room that I came across. I learned the artist's name was Sarah Hart Landolt, and she had all this amazing 2D art depicting colors of different type of emotions. And I took a bunch of pictures in there, and I was going to post it, but I'm like, I feel like I want to get permission from the artist before I share her art studio. So I reached out to her, and she was fine enough with me sharing it. So I'm going to put her website and information below. because when I first saw this, it was like this artistic chaos. And I don't mean that to be a bad thing. I mean that to be a good thing, because you're seeing almost kind of like the mind work in this vivid imagination. How do you take this blankness and make just this amazing, bold, vivid artwork? And as we explored more around some of these art studios, I just couldn't believe the types of disciplines that they would do. Because I saw another art studio where it was more focused on fabrics. So what happened with that is, with all these artists, they started coming into church, and as a result, they could feature their art in the church. And that brought in a younger type of generation for this church and just got it much more excitable. And it's a very unique twist on things. It's a creative in its own way, but that's what this church did to kind of battle that aging congregation. So after my personal tour, we started up church, and the Reverend had lit up a bunch of candles at the front, and they had the Advent wreath there as well. So we had this poetic type of reading where we would all pray together, "Forgive us for extinguishing hope." And then the Reverend would snuff out the hope candle, and that would continue with peace and joy and love. And then after all the candles had been burned out, the Reverend would mention that Christ continues to light our way, and then the candles would be relit. There also was a prayer of illumination. So this is where we would breathe in and breathe out, and we would just focus on the silence for a while as she would read a prayer. We were all given these blank white pieces of paper, and we were asked to write prayers on them. Give us about, we had about 3 or 4 minutes. And after seeing the artists and residents upstairs, and especially with it being the new year, like we always talk about New Year's resolutions, and we literally have a blank slate to this year, this blank canvas. So I wrote a prayer, just stream of consciousness, real quick, and I took a picture before I put it back into the offering bucket, I guess. And after service, we would pick out a prayer. So I got this prayer, and we were all asked to not write any names on it, but the prayer I received was, "Pray for my family and myself, dealing with the loss of my brother at this time." So I've been praying on that, but it just added that people aspect to everything. There was also an extended meet and greet, and during this time I met Jim. And I later learned after service he was actually a historian in downtown Nashville, and even gave a presentation about the Downtown Presbyterian Church that they posted on YouTube. So I'm going to put his link in the description box below. So I'll touch base on Jim a little bit later. But it's so interesting with this service, because then we did communion, and then we all formed a circle. And the Reverend was very open about this. Like, I know this will be weird at first, but let's get in a circle. Everybody did. And we held hands, and we just kind of held each other's hand and kind of squeezed it and went around the room doing that. And then we just kind of released at the end. So very unique, very creative. But I tell you, with the calmness of this service, this was something that I actually really enjoyed. So you're probably wondering, why the Egyptian revival architecture? Well, during my meet and greet, when I met Jim, he invited me for another tour, because I guess they had some visitors also visiting from Denmark. So I was able to take a little bit more of a view of this and learn a little bit about the history. And this thing is so rich in history. I'm going to try and do my best to kind of explain what happened. It started as First Presbyterian Church, I want to say 1815. And this is when churches pretty much dominated the skyline in Nashville. It's a much different story now. But the first 2 churches burned down, which seemed to be common in the 19th century. But this church played a pivotal role early on in Nashville, because on the steps of this church, they celebrated the winning of the Battle of New Orleans when Andrew Jackson was around. And then they also celebrated the inauguration of James Polk when he became governor of Tennessee. Well, both of those two men later became presidents of the United States of America. But when the second church burned down, they really want to go all out to make sure this wasn't going to happen again. So there was a competition in the city for who would do the architecture. So there was a popular architect named William Strickland that was in town to do the Tennessee State Capitol building. And with Strickland, he came a proposal of this crazy idea. So they said no to it, but then with a second idea, he came up with the Egyptian revival one. Now you have to understand, back in this day, Egyptian stuff, there was a lot of curiosity about it. Napoleon, the famous French military commander, he had led expeditions in Egypt. And I guess Egypt was a pivotal role when it came to trade exchanges and all that kind of stuff. But what Napoleon did is he took out these archaeological expeditions with scientists to explore Egypt and then pull out a bunch of artifacts and bring it back to Europe. That's when they found the Rosetta Stone. So news of this traveled to the United States. And so there was a big curiosity about it. So when Strickland proposed the Egyptian revival architecture for the church, it's outlandish. But what they think happened is there was this interest, but the richest woman in the state, she had a thing for Egyptian revival architecture. And as the richest woman in the state, she had some pull. So they think maybe she played a role in the decision behind that, because they're very well aware that the Egyptian stuff, it's a little weird mixed in with Christianity. So they know that. The pews, I noticed, is they were all numbered. And I even found the number 52 as I found my pew. And inside this little tiny museum, they actually showed, and I mentioned this in the Moody Church video I did for week 30. Churches back then in the 19th century, they had to be bought out or rented out. So they had little rent certificate slips and even the seating chart from back in the day. But in 1955, I guess First Presbyterian Church, the majority of the congregation wanted to move out of the downtown and go more towards a suburban area. And a lot of people still want to keep that downtown church, so they became Downtown Presbyterian Church. And ever since, they've really focused on helping out the homeless and those that were living in poverty. So yeah, with the history on this, just so unique. But I guess from what I found, there's only one. This is one of 3 Egyptian revival type of churches in the United States. So we're probably never going to see another one like this again. Hope you enjoyed this visit to the Downtown Presbyterian Church in downtown Nashville. I want to give a special thanks out to the church and also to Tom and Jim for giving me tours. Also want to say thanks to Sarah Hart Landolt for allowing me to give an inside glimpse into her art studio. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future church visits. But until next time, hope you have a good one.